Have you ever wondered what was actually going on with the polls with Trump and Biden, right? We've got real clear politics here, and this has 8 or so surveys, polls from supposedly credible organizations, and they all show Biden winning or leading by pretty decent margin, 10, 20% in a lot of cases here, right? But what if you could actually understand what was happening? And you didn't have to deal with all the biases that come with, first of all, polling, second of all, the media, right? When you stack biases on top of biases and then there's an agenda behind it, oh my goodness, right? That's what we're dealing with in 2020. So, glad you came here today because I'm going to get into the data, and we have a series where we take a look at each individual platform to understand who is actually winning and what is actually taking place based upon the data. There's not any sampling bias or stratification biases or other biases on top of that. I'll tell you where I get the data. You can go do it yourself. So, with that being said, it's your first time here. What's good? And for those of you returning, it's good to frickin' see you. Okay, so this is a one-part in a multi-part series where we're covering the election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And we are sick and tired of listening to some type of data that is manipulated and twisted to fit a certain narrative and agenda, whether you believe it's the left or whether it's the right. It tends to come from one side, but like it could be both, right? And it probably is. However, we know polls are inaccurate. We know they're fraught with all sorts of different biases, right? And I want to show you this for a second. So this is Real Clear Politics. They take all the different polls that they find on a national level, and they aggregate it together for stuff so people can find them all in one spot. So we've got Rasmussen here. We've got YouGov, which is part of something to do with The Economist, CNBC here, USA Today, NPR, and they all have Biden leading, right? And this is supposedly a national poll. But let's take a look at this. So that sample here, that's just basically how many people were talked to. And this could be, or it could be a phone, right? Because that's going to be super accurate. It could be some other way of capturing data, like actually going to out and capturing it from people at like a busy intersection or something. But more than likely, it's probably online. And we can see here that if you look at this one from YouGov, which is The Economist is like supposedly pretty reputable, right? Like they have a good reputation. Like they're not like CNN, right? There's a much better reputation associated with The Economist than there is CNN. And when you look at this, there's data here. So this is 1,165 people, and this was conducted several days ago. Today's 7/11, and this is 7/5 to 7/7 is when this survey poll thing was done, and shows Biden leading by 9 points, right? But there was 1,165 people. Let me say it again. There was 1,165 people contacted for this. 1,165 people contacted for this. And the media reports 1,165 people's opinion as what the collective of the American population, over 330 million people, is the truth. So basically 1,200 people, according to the media, are going to dictate the future of America. That's how they report it. So we want to actually see what's going on. Another part in the series is where we take a look at the Google search volume, the #1 site in the planet, to see what people are actually searching for. Or YouTube, the #2 site in the world, and we look at what people are actually searching for in YouTube, right? We can look at Donald Trump and Joe Biden and see what people are actually searching for, right? Because that captures a more authentic version of reality, and we don't have a sample size of 1,200 fucking people. It's based upon millions of data points. Like, It's laughable. I don't think most of the American population realizes that, like, the largest sample size here is from CNBC, and it's less than 1,700 people. If you take 1,700 divided by 330 million, that's like 4 or 5 decimal places to the right. Like 0.00000. That's the sampling size. Like, there's no data there. Versus, like, it's 2020. You can go to the internet and find this information for yourself. So I found this piece of research which was kind of interesting here. This is from Peter, I'm just going to call him Peter, Julius, and Jonathan, all from the University of Ithaca in New York. And I'm just going to read this part from the abstract here. We find consistent evidence for the existence of hidden Trump supporters who were included in the surveys but did not openly express their intention to vote for Trump. Most notably, when we account for these hidden Trump supporters in our October survey, both national and state level analysis foreshadow the Trump Day election support. So basically what that is saying is, because the media takes whatever information comes out, positive, negative, neutral, out of left field, and they take it to twist their narrative, right? And this is not some conspiracy. It's just data. That's what they do. Understandably, right? They're trying to not represent the most accurate version of reality. They're not trying to be 100% honest in what they do. They're not trying to be objective. The truth is not their beacon. That's not their North Star. That's not what they're aiming for. They're trying to push their agenda. They're trying to get eyeballs. They're trying to shape the American public. Now, for a second here, before we get into the data around Instagram, if you think about what advertising is, right? That's what happens on these platforms, right? These media organizations are putting forth their story, and then they be like, hey, GE, why don't you advertise with us and pay us this amount? We have this many number of eyeballs. This is a type of demographic person that watches our shit, right? And GM or other people who want to tell their story about how to sell these fucking markers, we're like, yeah, sure, right? So they'll do that. So what is the point of advertising? When you distill it down, right, GE or whoever the fuck makes these pens, right, is like, I'll sell that because what I'll do is I'll create an ad that portrays the story of how amazing these pens are, right? And that story that GE creates is to portray the usefulness of this. So in effect, the story that GE creates through their advertising on one of these news organizations is used to shape the viewer's opinion about this. So, what do you think, for half a fucking second, happens on the actual shows, in the actual news, right? You're not a fucking moron. It's just simple. You can figure it out for yourself. So what we did is, how can we get around all this? How can we solve this? Right? We know it's inaccurate. We know that there's fucking problems there. How do we get past that? So we wanted the most comprehensive set of data. Today we're taking a look at Instagram. And tomorrow we're going to take a look at their YouTube channel. So make sure you press that subscribe button and the bell notification so YouTube can notify you when I post a video. But on Instagram, we took a look at 4 separate factors. We took a look at how many followers were gained over the last 30 days for each one of the candidates. We took a look at the average number of comments over the last 9 posts or 20 posts, I believe it is, for each one of the candidates on Instagram. And we took a look at the average number of likes, again, in terms of the sample size of 9 or 20. And we took a look at the people who are actually talking about the candidates in terms of the hashtag Trump 2020 or Biden 2020, right? So let's take a look at each one of those things individually. And we can see, you just search over here and it just gives you the aggregate number on Instagram, and the same thing for Biden. Now to gather the other data, we used a site called Social Blade. They aggregate social data for different platforms. It's a super interesting tool you can use, and so we pulled a lot of the data from there. Now let's take a look at followers and talk about followers for a second. So followers could be a cloudy number, right? Like, I don't like to follow people that I don't really care about, right? Like, if you were like, I fucking hate Trump or I fucking hate Biden, like, why would you follow that person? That's me. Like, I like to think that I look at things in a more, I'm going to say logical, but what I mean is essentially a non-emotional way, right? Like, I don't give a fuck either way. I'm just going to do what's best for me. And if I don't agree with this person, the way that they think or their ideology, just don't pay attention to them. I don't follow them, right? So we're going to use that as one gauge. And when we take a look at this, the first time we did this, if you can go back here and look at that video on the channel here, but we saw that Trump had gained 820,000 new followers, and we just take that from right here. And that was about 10 days ago. So he's dropped in terms of the total number of followers that he's gained over the last 20 days from 820 down to 601,000 new followers. Joe Biden has gone from 465,000 down to under 300,000. So Trump has twice as many people following him. Maybe because he's president, there's a lot of people who don't like him who choose to actually follow somebody they don't like. I don't get it, but maybe that's the case. But in either way, in aggregate here, we've got 900,000 responses versus 1,500 or 1,000 here. Or 933. I don't know, you tell me, right? Well, on one side, we have a stupid amount of data. On the other side, we have barely 1,000, or definitely under 2,000. But the media reports this as the accurate representation of what the America thinks. I don't know. Let's move on to the next thing. So the next thing is the average number of comments. So we can see, again, Trump has dropped here in terms of the average number of comments from 25,500 roughly to just over 20,000 on average. So getting about 20,000 comments on average per post put up on Instagram. Joe Biden has grown. So actually, Trump here has dropped. So the trend for Trump is coming down, and the trend for Joe Biden is actually coming up, which is, that's interesting for anybody who supports Trump or supports Biden. He's gaining momentum, and Trump is losing. However, when I did look at this, I was like, that's kind of interesting. So I looked at a couple of Joe Biden's posts, and that's why I mentioned that there's people who probably follow a person who don't actually care for the person, because if you look at Biden's post, and like a large portion of those comments are actually coming from Trump supporters on Biden's posts. I don't know. If you're a Trump supporter and you don't like Biden, like, why the fuck are you following Biden? If you're a Biden supporter and you don't like Trump, why the fuck are you following Trump? I don't get it, but everybody likes to waste their time in one way or another, right? So that's kind of like a level of engagement in terms of understanding how engaged the audience is in terms of who's paying attention, right? Who's actually willing to contribute some type of opinion or thought or emoji, right? On the comment, right? Because that's going to affect the algorithm. And I think, I would like to think that people are not that, like, they know what they're doing, right? So if you're commenting on more posts for Trump and you don't like him, you're actually helping him because you're getting his posts into more people. And the same thing happens for Biden, right? You don't think that your comment on Biden's post, if you're a Trump supporter, is actually going to convert anybody that's a fucking Biden supporter to a Trump supporter? I mean, like, you just have these people bickering like, One calling the other person a fucking dumbass, the other person calling the other person a dumbass. He's a racist. No, he's a racist. Like, it's just the most asinine wasted amount of energy in the world. The next is the average number of likes. So this is kind of interesting when you take a look at the quantity differences here, right? So we saw an increase for both candidates here. Trump saw an increase of about 65,000 in terms of the average number of likes from about 10 days ago versus today. And Biden saw an increase of about 28,000 roughly. So he had a more than doubling the amount of likes increase in 10 days for Trump versus Biden. That's kind of interesting. It's a large number, right? Like, Trump had the 65,000 increase, which is like 40% of the total amount of average likes that Biden gets. So that's kind of interesting. And if you look at the ratio of likes or comments for this instance here, if we look at the average number of comments, because it takes more work to do a comment than a like, the average number of comments is 20,000 for Trump's last 20 posts versus Biden's last 20 posts was 6,000. And so you've got over a 3-to-1 ratio, meaning there's 3 comments for every 1 comment on Biden's post. Interesting, right? Let's take a look at the last here, which is interesting. I didn't actually include this on the beginning when I did this on 7-1, but I think it is a very interesting thing to include, because when you think about hashtag usage, right? It's one thing to leave a comment, right? As we can see here, 20,000 versus 6,000 on average per post for each candidate. But to take the time and actually post and use the hashtag in your post, that, I mean, you're way more vocal in that sense, because you're actually taking the time to use the candidate's hashtag. And I didn't look into this, but I tried to use a hashtag that is going to be more representative of who's kind of like supporting them, as in Trump 2020. More than likely, there's still people who are using that hashtag who are Biden supporters, who are just trying to talk shit, and vice versa in the other direction. But the staggering numbers here is what's really telling. We've got 2.262 million, so 2.25 million people that it's been used that many times on Instagram. Absolutely staggering. Versus Joe Biden is about 110,000. So over a magnitude of difference. It's absolutely insane. Like, it's pretty crazy, right? And how much more people are talking about Trump than they are Biden. And it's not just a generic, just hashtag Trump, right? Because you're going to have a lot more people who use that hashtag who are like, hey, fuck hashtag Trump, right? But there's also going to be a lot more accurate representation if you use a hashtag that's closer to what people are actually feeling, as in hashtag Biden 2020, right? There's going to be more people who support him. We would like to think the logic would go, the intuition would say, you're going to have more people who use that hashtag or the Trump one who actually support the candidate. Yeah, there's going to be some crossover from people who just don't like them. Of course, you're always going to get that. But when we actually take a look at this data, right, if you're using any one of these data points for the hashtags, the amount of support versus the other one is it's over a 20x. So Trump has 20x times more people talking about it than Biden does on Instagram. So there's 2 things that come along with this. First of all, we're getting a lot more data than what over here is reported on all these polls that Real Clear Politics brings together, right? This one has 1,000 from USA Today. NPR has 1,515. And you are an intelligent human being, and you can decide for yourself. Like, I don't give a fuck what you decide. I'm just looking for the truth for myself. And when we clearly see that there's a giant bias in one direction, And yet, when you go look at the data, right? You look at this data here, there's a difference, right? We've got 2-to-1, meaning for every one follower Biden gets, Trump gets 2. For every one comment Biden gets, Trump gets over 3. For every one like Biden gets, Trump gets like 5. You can decide, right? For every one time the hashtag Biden 2020 is used, there's 20 times where the hashtag Trump 2020 is used. I don't need to tell you what to think. You can do that yourself. I'm not here to twist this data. I'm here to present it to you and give you all the data so that you can decide as an intelligent fucking human, right? It's not up to me to make the decision for you. I could care less. I'm just going to show you the data because I want to understand what's going on because I know this isn't accurate. Take a look at 2016. We already know that. And if you support the truth, share this message with somebody. Whether you want to share the video, it helps the channel out tremendously, or you just want to share the message of what we're doing here, share the message. Like this video, share it on Twitter or something. We got to spread this message. Like, I want to get a website up so I can start putting this stuff up on the web. Nobody else is doing this. And there is a tremendous amount of manipulation that is happening. And there's so many people that are completely oblivious to what's happening in reality. If you guys have any questions, jump over to Instagram, say what's good, link in the description. I appreciate you guys. Peace.